Let's let that run for a minute. Looking good. Welcome back to season 2 of the Demand Better podcast. We are your consumer's guide in the health, fitness, and wellness space. We are sponsored by Fit Care Physiotherapy and Wellness, where the emphasis is focused on your fitness so you can avoid the healthcare space. My name is Corona, and I am coming to you from the concrete jungle, New York City, and I am joined by my co-host, Dr. Bo Babenko, who's in Erie, Colorado. What's up, Bo?
How are you? I just gave away the baby so we can do this. Got that dad energy going from Father's Day.
Happy Father's Day, Kenny.
Thank you.
So today we have my dear friend, who's a CEO and co-founder of the gaming company Arkadium. How he does what he does, I just can't understand, but we're going to find out. A father of 3 boys who is married to the love of his life, Jessica Rovello, who happens to be his business partner and co-founder of Arkadium. I am so excited and honored to introduce my friend, CUSE alum, Kenny Rosenblatt. What's up, Kenny?
What's up? Good to see you. Happy to be here.
So, dude, we're glad to have you. You got a lot of ground to cover, so let's get after it. A lot of people say, and you're a CEO, a lot of people say they're too busy to take care of themselves. And what I've learned is that you do it all when it comes to work-life balance. You simply don't talk about it. You live it and you instill it in your employees through the company core values, which are 1, fierce drive, wanting to win, 2, positive energy, and 3, living a full life. Tell us about Arkadium so our listeners can truly understand the uniqueness of what you've built and how you can do it all.
Sure, that's a loaded question, but I'll do my best. So my wife and I started Arkadium 23 years ago, had no idea what we were doing, and then just grinded and figured out a way to, generate income and grow. But we're a gaming company. We're in the entertainment space. We have about 100 employees and have just been putting in the work every single day for 23 years. But it feels like we're just getting started. A lot of exciting stuff coming up, but been on a wonderful journey, tried to appreciate the ride so far and looking forward to the future. But as it relates to time and balance, I think you have to invent time, right? And that idea of inventing time is you outline what it is you want to do, and then you create time for it. But thinking that time is magically going to appear is really, really difficult. So if you say, I want to run a marathon, or I want to accomplish X, Y, Z in business, you create time to accomplish those things. So I always start with the goal and then create time to follow up, to make sure I put in the work, to make sure I get the job done.
So let's take a step back.
Okay.
Can you please tell everybody how you started this company? Because there's such an interesting story of how you started, and then we'll roll it forward.
Sure. My background's in engineering. My wife's background is in marketing, and we started the business because we were on a date at a Tower Records. I remember Tower Records back in the day. We were browsing CDs and stuff. We were talking about playing Miss Pac-Man, and she was like, I was the best Miss Pac-Man player. I was like, no way, I'm a better Miss Pac-Man player. And we tried to find a place to play Miss Pac-Man. Couldn't find an arcade in New York City at the time. We said, let's go back to the apartment and let's find a place online to play. Could not find a place to play online games against your friends. So we said, screw it. Isn't this a great idea for a company? And we quit our jobs, had no idea what we were doing. And we created the first place to play classic arcade games against your friends.
It's unbelievable. Go ahead, Bo. Do you have a question, Bo, or no? Oh, Bo's on mute. That's that game you play on your station. He's on mute.
Right.
So I was listening to your story. I was doing my research. What I learned, man, is that you basically did this with no money. You did it on your 401k, and you were doing work you were out in Ukraine for a period of time, and you almost got fined and all this other stuff, and you had to move to Russia.
Yeah. Crazy story.
Just kind of explain it, because it's so unique. And your situation with Jessica is so unique, because it's very rare The one thing I love about your story is your love for your wife and how you guys are really a team, like an
Sure.
amazing team. So give us that background.
Sure. So we started the business in the year 2000. You got to remember, these are early days of internet, right? We took out our 401k, which at the time was a total of $4,000, right? So we started the business on $4,000, and we knew we needed software built. We needed games to be built, right? So we first found a company in India that would work for $2 an hour, but program, right? And they said, yes, they would do it. Yes, they would do it. And then they never delivered. They missed deadlines. I flew to India a bunch of times, and it was just a disaster. They told me the software they built for us was like a glass house, which is like the last thing you want to hear about software. So we then we looked for another company. We found a company in Ukraine that would work for $12 an hour to build software. They had some good experience, and they did an amazing job. A team of 8 started building software for us. It really was working and really fun to play. And we ended up buying that company in Ukraine for like 90 grand and bought that company, but they were in the Crimea. So from, let's call it the year 2003 to 2014, built my whole business, built my New York office, built my Ukrainian office up to 100 people. And then boom, just like that, Putin invades Crimea, annexes the area. And overnight, President Obama is putting out a kind of a statement saying my business is illegal. If I worked with them, I'd have to pay a $1 million fine or to go to jail for multiple years. So all of my software that I was developing was immediately kind of illegal. And I had big clients that I had to service. They needed my software and they needed my expertise. And that really was a challenge. So what we ended up doing, because we put so much effort into building the culture, the people in that office loved working for us. They loved, what we did. And they said, listen, let's identify a location outside of the Crimea, which was the sanction zone. And they identified this area in Russia called Krasnodar. So we moved and airlifted about 50 people out of Russia into Krasnodar, which was out of the sanction zone, and establish an entity over there. But literally they did this in like 48 hours, move their kids, move their schools, move their houses. It was like a really crazy time, but we got it done. And it was just, really crazy experience.
How could you go from, if that's the sanction zone, and I'm just so curious, gosh darn it. If that's the sanction zone, how could you go into Russia?
So the sanction zone, you got to understand, Ukraine is here, Russia's here, right? So the sanction zone was just in the Crimea. So the area that we moved into called Krasnodar was, way outside of Crimea. It's in, Russia proper.
Okay. Oh, it's unbelievable.
Yeah.
So the more and more I read with your story, the whole concept of you having your first big break, because you were at it for like 3-4 years, right? It was
we call them the rice and beans years. We knew nothing. We knew nothing about business. We knew nothing about, how to structure deals or how to build, enterprise organization, but we just learned by doing. We just did.
So you started this at 24.
Yep. 24, right? Young
24.
pup.
So you did that. And then you went out and made this plan, and it was from, for the poker game.
Yeah.
They wanted a poker game, and you put a proposal out for $225,000, and your mentor told you to put a 0 on it.
Yeah, that's a true story. Good research, Corona. True story. So
no fears in the process of putting that 0 and just being like.
Yeah. So just to clarify, it was 2004. We had no idea what we were doing, no money, but we had awesome multiplayer poker software. And if you remember, poker was everywhere. It was on TV. It was all over the place. Our software was great, but it wasn't real gambling and real poker play. You had to go offshore for that. So we had great US based play for fun poker software. we got a phone call one day from RJ Reynolds Tobacco Company, and they said, "Do you have poker software?" We said, "Gosh darn, we do." And they said, "Put a proposal together." We put a proposal together, $25,000. We thought we would like make it. You know, we were making like $3 a day in revenue. And then all of a sudden, one of the biggest companies in the world comes by. They ask for a proposal. And fortunately, I knew early in my career, I needed to surround myself with awesome people, just great, awesome people. So one of the guys I surrounded myself with is a guy named Strauss Zelnick, who is the CEO of Take-Two Interactive. He was chairman of CBS Corporation, big guy. And he is like, "Dude, you're talking to one of the biggest companies in the world. They're going to laugh you out of the room at a $25,000 proposal. Add a zero." And I was like, "Are you crazy? 250,000? Are you nuts?" He urged me to do it. I took his advice. And then what happened was we submitted the proposal and it was accepted. And that literally helped put that Arkadium in business, because we had never seen that much money before. And then from there, we were able to really start adding employees and growing. But to answer your question really quick, there was a lot of fear. But I trust the people I surrounded myself with. I knew they were more experienced businessmen. And just like I trust my coach and my fitness coaches, they know it works. And I just got to kind of follow the routine.
It's amazing. Bo, you got a question?
No, it's an incredible story. It's my first time hearing it. So, and I was about to ask for us amateurs what gaming really means, because I'm not in that world at all. And so I appreciate. I think you brought it together there in terms of the software. So yeah, what kind of stuff do you guys do now that you've evolved over these last 2 decades? It sounds like.
Yeah, so gaming is a $200 billion industry. It's bigger than TV and movies combined. 1 out of every 3 people in the world play games. Okay, and they're not just, a lot of people think games are for kids. No. There are games for toddlers. There are games for tweens. There are games for teenagers, 18 to 34 and up. We happen to make games that are like brain games, mind games for an older demographic. So think of word games, card games, puzzle games, things like that. And the biggest one that we've done, we work with Microsoft. They're one of our biggest partners. We put the solitaire into 800 million Windows devices. Wow. So 800 million machines have our solitaire game. But, we make a lot of games, probably have created over 300 in my time.
When you made those games, the older, it's amazing. When you made those older games, because my mother has Alzheimer's and we had her on games, playing games. Did you have any of that into your thought process when you were building the games for adults?
So it's really interesting. I do a lot of research and strategy work, and I always say, like, where can I win? Where can I be number one? And you got to understand, with a $200 billion industry, I'm not going to be able to compete with the EA Sports. I'm not going to be able to compete with Activision, Ubisoft, these publicly traded companies with billion-dollar valuations. So we said to ourselves, Jess and I, we did a strategy session, and we were like, where can we be number one? And we identified a question that I think is an amazing question that everyone should think about, which is, what do you know that nobody else knows? What do you know that nobody else knows? And our answer to that question is that older generation, right? 55, 65, 75, 85, they still love playing games. Yeah. So we said, if we are the brand of choice for that older demographic and our games are built for them, we think we can be number one there. So we said, let's go for that. And then the EAs of the world, they can't focus on that small of a niche, but we can. That's still a multiple $100 million market. So we said, let's go for that. And that's been a strategy that's really been working for us.
It's amazing. It's really, really, really amazing. So people don't understand this. You guys are co-CEOs. So at there's certain point in times within your company where Jess is running the company, and there's certain points in time when you're running the company, and I'm assuming you become Mr. Mom and do the other stuff while Jess is running the company. Can you explain that dynamic and how that works?
Yeah, it's been a crazy, wild ride, but I wouldn't change it for anything because we are like yin and yang, right? Like I'm a little bit wild, I'm a dreamer, I'm a little off the cuff. She is very strategic. She is very, you know, process oriented, and that combination really works well. So, just to clarify, I was the CEO for the first 13 years. I then wrote her a love letter, said we need more women in tech and we need, you know, more female leaders representing. So I asked her to be the CEO. So for the last 7 years, she became the CEO. And then now we've just recently switched back where she's taking a break from Arkadium and I'm back at the CEO realm. But we've both run and built this company together, and we've just focused on strengths-based leadership, which is, what are you really good at? Okay, you do that. What are you really not good at? You can grow in that area, but let's find areas and ways to support you in that area.
It's just amazing. It's just amazing. Bo, you got any questions? Because I'll keep asking them questions.
No, it's so many life lessons and things we talk about in other capacities, whether it's fitness, health. You can hear all the cool parallels shifting kind of over. But yeah, let's shift to that. So you talked about 75 hard, triathlon, and this drinking thing. Tell us a little about the drinking situation.
Yeah. So let's dive into that. So you got to understand, my grandfather was an alcoholic. My father, I would say, is a functioning drinker. And I have that fire in my belly where I would drink every single day if I could. And I realized that in order to be the best version of myself, drinking every day is not getting me closer to that. I realized that. It took me 40 years to realize that. So for the last 8 years, I invented a system for myself that I don't think works for everybody. It works for me. And it's called 6222.
Before you go into that, can you
Yep.
give a little bit? Because I think a lot of people, including myself, are in that kind of like, I'm pretty sure, and people tell me this is the thing that I should do. But what was that switch for you, other than maybe having that in your family, but like what was the actual pushing point to say, I got to make a switch?
I think I had a couple of embarrassing evenings, right?
Okay.
Embarrassed myself and had shame on my face, right? With a major client at the time. Number two, I think the only fights Jess and I ever had were about my drinking. Like, so, you know, we get along really well. We have arguments, but, you know, smart arguments and respectful arguments. But the ones that, you know, kind of left a mark were about my drinking. And I always just wanted better for myself. I knew there was a next level plane that I wanted to get to, but I wasn't sure how. And I knew that drinking was definitely not elevating me closer to that. So there was some
for anyone watching, this is not alcoholic. This is
I'm with you on
and I'm drinking water, but I'll say this, that Kenny and I have had many good times together and played many, many games together. I'll leave that on the table when he was in college.
Yeah. Like I said, it took me 40 years to put a system in place for myself that would work for me versus against me.
So tell us about that system. Go ahead.
Yep. So I knew that if I left a option to drink on the table, that I would take that option every time. So for myself, I knew that I needed to be on or off. And for me to be off alcohol, I needed to have a big goal that I was training for. So what I did is I established a system where January to June, no drinking, nothing, zero. But I train for a big race, whether it's an Ironman, whether it is a marathon, whether it's a half, whatever it is, a big race in June. So every day from January to June, I work my ass off, train, be a good husband, be a good father, work, and I'm the best version of myself for that period of time. But I wasn't ready to say I'm not drinking anymore. So once that big race is over and I accomplish it, right now we're in that moment because I did a marathon last weekend. I am drinking again. So this is where the 2 is. So the 6 is January to June. The 2 is July and August. Drink as much as I want. Once September rolls around, train for the New York City Marathon, 2 months clean. right? Once the New York City Marathon's over, party during the holiday season, and then do it all over again. So this will be 6 years running where I've been doing this type of program. And what the end of the day, it's 8 months no drinking, 4 months drinking, and that works for me.
I didn't know you were running the marathon because I would have had you run for my nonprofit, Active Plus.
Okay.
Because we have
beds.
You
got it.
Bo, you want to follow up on that or no?
Yeah, no, it sounds like a great system. And again, I think there's a lot of folks who would love to, it's that goal setting, it's that reverse engineering you were talking about from the beginning, right? It's great to say, hey, I know this is something I need to do. How am I going to accomplish these things versus just saying, I want to lose 10 pounds. I'm going to hire a personal trainer and assume that that's going to get us there. Or even I'm going to sign up for a triathlon and like, I guess I'll start running and biking and swimming every now and then. And yeah, how is that schedule life? 3 kids, triathlon. And I actually signed up for the, I don't know if you guys remember this, they did the New York City Ironman. Yep. That was the 1 year I was about to do it. I didn't do it the first year. The second year I had signed up for because I had someone who volunteered, and so I could get the pass for the next year. And it was like a $1,400 registration fee, which was like the biggest in all of Ironman in the world. And so I signed up. I had just started been doing CrossFit, and I was like, cool, let's do this. And then I realized I had committed to a year of doing like whatever that is, 3 hours of swimming, 3 hours of biking, 3 hours of running every week. And I was like, I don't know how I'm going to do that. And at the same time, I didn't even have 3 kids. So tell us a little bit about bouncing that schedule. Like you said, you alluded to the co-CEO thing where strengths are definitely a piece where if you can build on the strengths, step away from things you are not as strong at. But yeah, how does that time management of all of that work?
Yeah, I'll be honest. My wife wanted to kill me. Right? It was rough. It was rough. I can talk about creating time all I want, but bottom line is that it is a demanding training sessions. So, for example, for me, it was 2 workouts a day. Every day, I took Mondays off, so I had 1 rest day, and I would wake up at 5, get my swim in the morning, and then do a run or a bike later in the day. So I always had time for like the 1 workout in the afternoon, but the 1 in the morning first thing, that's where I had to invent time. And then on weekends, I'd wake up at 5 still, and I'd be like, sorry, hon, I'm going for a 7-hour bike. Sorry, hon, I'm going for, a 6-hour bike ride. That eats your time. So I can tell you that in the beginning, I had done a Ironman 70.3, which is a half Ironman. And I completed that. I was super proud, but I don't do half of anything. Right. And then somebody told me a joke. They're like, oh, you did the Tin Man? And I'm like, whoa. Tin Man was not cool with that. So then I talked to Jess about it. I was like, listen, I want to do the full thing. She knew that I wanted to do the full thing because I don't do half of anything. We agreed as a couple that this was going to be a rough 6 months of training, but we agreed to it together. And I'm forever grateful that she let me have that time.
How is this trickling down to your kids? Because your kids are young when you're going through this, man. I mean, it's a lot on Jessica, but your kids were young when you were doing this. Are they avid workout people now? Or are they?
How old are they now?
Right now they are 15, 13, and 10. And I think these are very important years for them. Yeah. And for me, it's about repetition of the message. And that message can be verbal, or that message can be action oriented and what they see. Right. So they didn't just see me one day, put on a headband and go run outside. They saw me daily for years training, whether it was on the trainer bike in the house or going out for the swim or coming on runs with me. Right. So it's the message that gets, little bit here, a little bit here, a little bit here over time that I think really resonates. And I'll be honest, I'm trying to grow amazing independent 40-year-olds, right? Not an amazing independent 14-year-old because they're going through all sorts of stuff as they grow. But I want them to be weapons when they're 40 years old. Independent, awesome, getting after it, living the best versions of themselves. So all I can do is show them the way that I think works for me and then let them chart their own course.
Wow. Now, with all of this, because there's another piece to this whole thing that you haven't discussed yet, which is your meditation, your mindfulness and your breath work, which Bo and I both believe in the breath work. Tell us, man.
I just feel like it's all connected, right? It's all connected. And the more research I've done, the more books I've read, they were all kind of saying the same thing, just in different ways, right? You know, you have to stay active. You got to stay off the booze. You need 8 hours of sleep at night. You got a healthy diet, right? Hear all of that. And meditation and spirituality has been part of that conversation. So 10 years ago, my wife got me a gift for something called transcendental meditation. And I'm like a hyper guy. Like I can't fucking sit still, right? Like I need to be moving, but I learned how to kind of calm the brain down. And I think that provides a huge amount of value. They say that the average person has 60,000 thoughts a day. Okay, how they measure that, I don't know, but I've heard it, right? 60,000 thoughts a day. If you can get that to 30,000, 10,000, 5, 0 thoughts for a little bit of time, just think about the break that you're giving this kind of brain muscle and then the rewards you reap after it's got some time to relax. So I love that idea. And I would say that I've been fairly consistent. I'm not a twice a day, every day religiously, because I'm just not that. But I can count on it when it's there, and I go for it when I feel like I need it.
It's just awesome. Just quick question. Jessica work out?
Works out all the time. I mean, she's like the real athlete in the family. I mean, she was like, she played volleyball, softball, basketball, varsity, when she was a freshman. She's got the long legs and long arms. So fortunately, my kids are starting to get taller than me, which I'm grateful for.
Yeah. Oh my God. Go ahead, Bo.
Nothing. That's the beauty of marrying up, I guess, right? We all hope to.
Totally. I'm like a 5. She's like a 10.
There
You're
go.
You're more than a 5, my friend. So
okay, I'll take it.
let's talk about the life of a CEO. And I hear this all the time in my practice when people come and say, I really don't have time. I really don't have time. You said you've created time. You were around a lot of CEOs because that's, you're in that, I think it's YBO. You were
YPO, Young Presidents.
YPO, yeah. You just passed down your presidency just recently to somebody else. I see most CEOs that I know normally aren't in shape. Mm-hmm. They're normally not in shape. They normally aren't happy.
Yep.
And the question is, in that field, when I was listening to you and doing research of a friend of mine, and I'm sitting there, you kind of look at everything that all these guys are doing, and you're living your best life,
mm-hmm.
and they are not. And I'm just, it's a weird thing because you're around them. What do you see as the biggest flaw out there with the work-life balance?
It's not, to me, it's not a weird thing. All it is that they've prioritized money over everything else. They've prioritized money over everything else. So when you prioritize money, your personal life, your relationships, your own health and wellness is prioritized lower than making money. So when your number one priority is making money, you're going to work all the time and let those other things fall by the wayside. And guess what happens? They make the money and then they look to share it and they have no one to share it with. And sometimes, the balance is off. Not for everyone, but I see that a lot where they just overcompensate on the money side, and it ruins a lot of other aspects. I'm trying to go for a more well-balanced approach, and I'll be honest, sometimes I get envious or jealous of the guy who is working like a dog all day, all night, all weekends, and has created $1 billion company. And he's got the X and the Y and the Z, right? I get envious of that when I see it. And it eats me up a little, but it does take me some time. I do step away and say, I wouldn't trade my relationships with my kids, my relationships with my wife, and how my relationship with myself for anything in the world. So yes, I'm allowed to be jealous of a guy's yacht or a car or his mansion, whatever, but I know that I wouldn't sacrifice what I have in order to have those other things.
All right, so let's keep this moving here. Let's talk about the farm.
Yeah.
I know you. I know you've got a farm.
Yep.
Talk to me, man. You
So,
farming. Come on now.
Dude, I was there all weekend. I was literally shoveling manure most of the weekend. I had to clip my nails for this podcast because it was dirt under them and I was smelling like a pig. But for me, I'm in a digital job, right? Tech is my world. And I need to turn it off. Like, I don't want to be in that all the time. I need like nature in my life. I need to be able to just like chill out and let the brain come down. So we have a 100-acre farm in Sullivan County, New York, and we have fruit trees and a big plot for different vegetables, and I just love growing stuff. And I believe the manual labor involved with farming is for me a very meditative type activity. So I just find that I'm in flow when I'm like putting mulch around my tomato trees, and I can spend all day doing that, so that when I come back to work on Monday and I'm in tech and I'm in digital, I'm like, let's go, versus burnt out from it.
No, dude, did you get your horses yet?
Didn't get horses yet. The order, we have chickens, but next is coming is goats and pigs.
What? I just need that. Why goats and pigs?
Because my oldest son loves animals, and from the moment he was born, he's just been pushing for different animals at the farm as pets versus as farm animals that can produce.
So you take the eggs from the chickens and you cook them up yourself?
Yeah, man. Yeah. It's great.
You're just this isn't the Kenny I knew when I was in high school.
That's right. I was talking to my high school buddies the other day. They're like, and I had just, who are you? Who the hell are you? This is not the guy that was taking bets at Syracuse and
I remember those days.
doing shots on the bar. Yeah. But we all evolve.
And hopefully.
Yeah. You got a question, Bo?
I was saying, hopefully we all evolve. Not everyone does.
Yeah, well, I'll tell you this. I was thinking about this earlier today. I believe that finding my wife was the single greatest thing in my life, because she was already like on this journey, and I'm just like holding on for dear life when I met her. And I feel like without finding her, I could have been living in a very steady non-growth aspect of my life. And the people, when you say like, how's it going, they're like, surviving, or like, same shit, different day. That's like the worst answer ever, right? But I very much could have been one of those guys that said those answers. So I thank her for kind of opening up a larger world to me, and that world is about personal growth.
I think it's a very, very, it's a necessity for all of us to grow. Listen, Bo and I,
you need to surround yourself with those folks, and that's the whole. You are the average of the 5 people you surround yourself with, and if your spouse, your significant other, can be that bright of a force pulling you in the right direction, that's powerful. You mentioned high school friends. We have a monthly catch up with my high school football team. That there's one guy who's on a lot of those calls, and I'm like, you are the same person you were in 1997. Wow, like you have a family and things and jobs, and you have some success and all that great stuff, but like your personality is exactly the same. You seem to not have evolved at all. Like I was like, right. Okay. Yep. Thank you for that perspective. And sometimes I think we need that perspective. So I'm glad you're able to share that with our listeners. And I don't know if I cut you off, Dave, but what were you going to say?
You never know, man. Listen, man, we can sit here and talk to Kenny for hours. Kenny, what's your next big thing? The marathon's the next thing. What if you had a goal, like one big thing that you haven't done, what would it be from a fitness perspective?
The Ironman was brutal. Like, it was brutal. Like, it took me 14 hours, right? And my goal was 12 hours, 30 minutes.
Wow.
It took me 14 hours, and I'll only blame the 95-degree heat for my slower time. But fitness goal, I haven't defined one yet that I haven't done. But I just want to stay healthy as long as I can, right? I want to stay fit and healthy for, to see my grandkids one day, to just grow up and like be the best version of myself for as long as possible.
No, it's amazing. It's really, listen, man, we put this podcast together because we both believe, Bo and I believe, that we need to demand better from the things that are around us. And we're paying a lot of money for a lot of stuff. That's in the training room. If it's a trainer, Bo's a physical therapist. I'm in the training world. He's in the physical therapy world. And we're just seeing people you're going out there to get better and to get to that next level as a human being. And what's happening is that the person that's facilitating that to you a lot of times is incapable of doing that because they're on the wheel. Yeah. They're on a wheel and they're putting you into a program that worked for somebody else instead of looking at you as an individual and promoting you up and helping you to get to the next level. What I get most of my passion from is working. I have a 96-year-old woman who's a Holocaust survivor who I got out of a walker, and she walks around now everywhere she wants to go. She has the walker because her lungs are scarred from the Holocaust, but she's out there and she's pushing. I believe we heal ourselves. And I believe we have the capability of doing that. And I think you're an amazing example of that. Because when I look at the business world, there's not a lot of people like you. And the people that I deal in the business world are not like you at all. I do have a few that are just phenomenal people. But most of the guys I know that in the fitness are playing golf. Jessica, when she complains about you doing Ironman, because she could be a golf widow.
Right.
I mean,
but I think that, that spouse relationship is, is super, super important. And I wish I could tell you that like I had a strategy and I knew exactly the type of woman that I wanted. I didn't know anything, right? But there was some attraction there, physically, emotionally, and mentally, and it worked out really, really well. And I know that the spouse is such a important, person in somebody's life, where that could either work for you, against you, or just kind of like meh, right? And I hear a lot of people in the meh category, and I just really got very, very lucky in that regard.
No, it's amazing. Your story is absolutely amazing.
I want to go back to highlight your goals that you just said about being able to play with your grandkids, and something I talk about a lot. I have a separate podcast from here, but I bring it up here as well. And I don't know if I actually don't know if we've brought it up to you, David, either. Is the book Outlive by Dr. Peter Attia. Have you heard of that, Kenny?
Yeah, I know Dr. Peter Attia very well, but I haven't read that book.
Yeah, so that just came out a few weeks ago, or maybe 2 months ago now. But one of the things he talks about is the Centenarian Olympics. And again, I heard that same kind of verbiage, so I'm not surprised you're actually familiar with him. But he talks about, when I'm 100 years old, what do I need to be able to do? And let's reverse engineer that, because he's got that Silicon Valley mind as well of taking it back and saying, yeah, how's your cardiovascular fitness? How long can you hang? How's your grip strength? All these little things that we know are more likely to allow us to be thriving, successful human beings, more capable when we turn 100. Maybe we only make it to 90, but that's a pretty good trade-off, I think, for most of us that are in that mindset. So I just wanted to highlight that. And for anyone not familiar, that whole concept of Centenarian Olympics is something, I try to work on every client I work with is something we say, hey, we can get you out of pain in 30 minutes. We can get you moving better and get a plan in place for the next 30 days. But if we don't have a 30-year plan, then I feel like we're wasting time. And again, that's that whole demand better that Corona was talking about.
Yeah. So to follow up on that, I have always wanted to win a marathon, right? To win, right? And I know that I'm not keeping up with these Kenyan guys. I'm not going to do a sub 3-hour marathon, etc. But there is something called age group, right? So I did my first marathon, when I was 22 years old, and I came in, X thousandth place, right? this last weekend, I was in Lake Placid. I came in 7th place for my age group. 7th place. So I figure if I keep going, right, these people are going to start dropping off, and I'm going to get first and second place, whether I'm 69, 79, whatever it is. So eventually I'll get there.
That's that outlive concept. You got to outlive the folks who are, doing that. And yeah, a lot of, it's interesting too, though. I'll warn you, you might know this in the endurance community, is the longer you train, the more you build that endurance. So a lot of endurance athletes do, peak into their 40s and they're setting world records there. You said 3-hour marathons. I mean, those Kenyan guys are I think someone just broke a 2-hour marathon.
Yeah, I think so.
It's craziness. But yeah, that's awesome in terms of goals and awareness of that. And yeah, that's the idea is I'm right there with you. My goal is definitely to outlive a lot of folks. And I see all these kind of 40-year-olds, 50-year-olds who are, again, we talk about sacrificing for the dollar and their career. And again, it's hard to say they're wrong for doing it, but and like you said, should we be jealous of their big boats and things like that? Or should we say, hey, I have my health and 20, 30 years from now, we might have a very different conversation.
Yeah. One of the things that I did that really helped me with that, because I struggled with, some form of envy or jealousy for a while, was I was asked to do an exercise about like, you're at your 100th birthday, explain what it was and what the party was celebrating, who was there and what they would say and who would be speaking. And as I went through that exercise, of course, I wanted my wife there, I wanted my kids there, but grandkids there, some business people. And then what I realized is it's all about relationships. It's all about relationships. So sure, do I need to have some monetary stability to be able to have, a nice home and blah, blah, blah. But it's the relationships that matter more than anything. And fostering those relationships and creating experiences with those relationships is the most valuable thing ever. So for me, I invest into those relationships, knowing that it's not just a one and done thing. These are people that I want to, spend decades with in some cases and building on. And that comes full circle.
Well, with the pandemic, there's been a lot of mental health issues, and a lot of that has to do with relationships. People don't understand, and I'm not talking about a relationship through a screen. I'm talking about you and me going to dinner, Bo and I going to dinner, and being in each other's company. That I think nowadays that there's a thought process that you don't know your neighbors. You should know your neighbors,
right?
And you should know who's around you. We talked about this 2 episodes ago when we were discussing this topic, and we're in a world right now where your kids might consider a relationship online as an equivalent relationship to as what you have with your wife or what you have with somebody that's present. And part of the reason I think we're having problems communicating now has to do with that lack of relationship, true relationship. We're going to have in the future, we're supposed to have Donnie McPherson come on, and he's talking about toxic. He's going to be talking about toxic masculinity and how men don't have true relationships such as women do. And I just find the whole topic of relationship just tremendously interesting, not only from the point of what it is, but the point of what it does to us physically and how we can be better people and we can live better lives with relationships. So everybody you surround yourself is vitally, vitally important.
Yeah, I totally agree. And this is an area I've dug pretty deep on because, listen, I have relationships with my high school buddies and my college buddies and my business buddies, right? But one of the things I didn't really learn growing up is how to communicate effectively and how to really be in touch with feelings and express those feelings and find out about how other people feel. So I have this kind of framework for conversations, right? And I look for what we call level 3 conversations, meaning, me and you pass each other, hey, what's up? How you doing? Blah, blah, blah. Level 1 conversation, really basic, right? Level 2 is like, how's your family? How's it going? But it's still kind of surface. But level 3 is like when you're feeling that you can share without being judged, and you can listen really well and have those conversations that people really want to have with you. So when I go into a relationship or a conversation, whether it's an employee or my kid, I'm looking for that opportunity to have a level 3 conversation, right? And the perfect example of a level 3 conversation is after someone has experienced loss, right? Whether it's a loss of a parent, loss of somebody, right? You are more willing to have that conversation at that moment because your state of mind understands how sacred life is, and you're willing to have those conversations. But now I allow pauses to happen. I see when somebody's talking where they want to go somewhere, and I'll pick at that scab and say, "Tell me more about that." Because people do want to have deeper conversations than just the surface level stuff. What's the weather? What'd you do this weekend? What's your next vacation? Whatever it is, they want to be able to share on a deeper level. And if you can have that conversation, your relationship is able to go to magnificent places.
Well, I think a lot of people learn that from their kids, because you have to. Your kids are different, and your kids, the way you communicate with your kids, isn't level 1, level 2. You're trying to get to level 3, but sometimes they're not ready to go to level 3 with you, and it might be like a car ride to school or something where you guys are in the car and you're talking, and they give you some information. I just don't see at this juncture people having level 3 conversation, and our age bracket for sure, because Bo's a little younger than us. But I know for us, it wasn't cool to share.
It wasn't
had
cool.
to be tough. You had to be tough.
I love my dad. He didn't say he loved me until I was in my late 30s, right? So like, I love him. He was a provider. He was a stoic provider, right? He provided for the family, and that's the role he played. Fine, right? But I think the world's evolved a little bit more, and I think that people are starting to have these conversations. But I'll tell you, I could have raised my kids the same way, right? But I created time, and we do something now called Family Forum, where once a quarter, we sit down at a really interesting, cool spot, whether it's at a beach or our kitchen table, and I structure a conversation about how we can be better, and we give each other feedback, and we know it's a sacred place, and we talk about things that we're really proud of each other about and things that we're not proud of each other about. But it's a safe place, just educating them on the process of having that conversation. And listen, I've been doing that since they were 5 years old, and they wanted snacks and they were getting up to pee and doing all this stuff. But the consistency of teaching them how to have those conversations over time has really matured their EQ in terms of being able to communicate with other people.
That's just amazing.
I am hopeful for the future, knowing there's parents like you out there.
Oh, thanks.
he has an 8-month-old. He's sitting there with his 8-month-old.
I started a dad's group, so these are the kind of forums that I recognize they don't necessarily exist, and so I actually created it myself. I said, hey, these are conversations, and I text a bunch of other guys that again, under 2-year-old kids, and they're like, I don't really talk about my feelings in public settings. Like, maybe they'll have that conversation with me over a beer, but I know that we're probably not going to get a beer anytime soon or whatever. So I'm like, I'm going to start this. If you're in, you're in. Great. Let's have these conversations. But unfortunately, again, I think unless people like us start pushing that envelope, and let's see who comes along for the ride. But I think there's too many people who either never get access to that, who are surviving, like you brought up your dad, and just, again, we can judge it, we can not judge it, but it is what it is. So yeah, I think I'm as with an 8-month-old, you're bringing up a lot of stuff that I'm like, I really hope to be able to provide for my own kiddo, and and there's how that translates to everyone else listening out there, whether they have kids or not. David's a non-child human, so
I have plenty of kids that I work for at the nonprofit, and they need examples, and I do my best that I can do to help those kids and to make sure that the kids get my ear, and I learn from them more than they probably learn from me, and I will say that every single day.
And you're like a super role model for them. You're just like living and doing it.
You're the best. I do it. I just love Kenny. So listen,
that wasn't apparent at all.
No. We're coming to the end of this. Tell the listeners, give the listeners a few things that you think they should take away from the conversation in terms of time. When what we're talking about, and basically people just making excuses in terms of I don't have any time. And I know you are one of the busiest people I know,
Mhm.
and you create time, which I think is an incredible term. But what is your advice to others in terms of living their full life and having that great work-life balance?
Yeah. So for me, if it's in your head, you're dead, right? If it's in your head, you're dead. And what that means to me is that we have these dreams and hopes for ourselves, get them down on paper. So every 5 years, Jess and I make a plan for the next 5 years. And I was resistant to this when she first brought it up to me. I was like, I'm not planning. I'm a spontaneous guy. I want to like have things, happen spontaneously and organically, right? But I went through the process, and the plan was business, personal, family, and mapped out for the next 5 years. And I just put all my dreams down in there, all my dreams, how big I can make the company, what I wanted to do with my farmhouse, how I wanted to raise my kids, what I wanted for my relationships with my wife and my kids, right? So give you an example, like date night every, once a month with my wife, or every year I take one of my kids on a solo trip. I wrote it all down, right? And then I had this like 5-year plan that if I did that, I would be living my best life. So then what goes from there is now you have this plan. Now you can create your focus on the things that you said matter the most, because there's so many distractions in this world, so many, that I could be reading the news or watching videos, and that would just suck up all your day, right? But if you just focus your time on the things that you wrote down that matter, then all of a sudden you're living your best life because you wrote down what you want, and then you're spending your time accomplishing that. And I'm telling you, if you spend the time, more likely than not, you're gonna hit those goals because you're laser focused on hitting them. And for me, this is the third time around, 15 years now that we've been doing this, and we're just checking the boxes. And as we look around, we're like, relationships are strong, business is strong. Obviously there are challenges that the world throws at you, but like I feel like I'm battle tested, having gone through a lot of the stuff that I have.
Dude, I think that's amazing advice. Bo, you got any other questions for him?
No, this is the first time I've had the pleasure of chatting with you, Kenny, and I really hope it's not our last.
Awesome.
I hope we can plan something soon, and I appreciate David connecting all of us. And yeah, such a cool story. A lot of great takeaways.
At
Yeah,
some
and
point,
Bo, sorry,
go
I was
ahead.
just going to say, Bo, as a follow-up, I can send you some of those family forum outlines so that when your kids get a little bit older, you can share those and try them out. They're really powerful exercises.
Amazing.
Man, Kenny, at some point we're going to have to sit down and talk about gaming and fitness and all that stuff, which is something I wanted, but I was more interested. I thought people need to hear your story in terms of how you do what you do. I've known you since you were in college, and I will say this to you, man, you are tremendous, man. I'm honored to be your friend, and I'm honored to have you in my life. And I can't thank you enough today for spending time with us.
Well, listen, Dave, you and I go back a long time. Your positive energy and your enthusiasm is just off the charts. Every time I talk to you, it just it lifts my spirit up, because I want to match that energy level, because that frequency that you operate is second to none. So I really appreciate that. That doesn't exist everywhere. So I know it exists with you, and I look forward to it.
So we're going to make dinner plans. We're going to make
You got
dinner
it.
plans.
Well, do you want them the first 6 months or my 2 months off?
We'll talk about that, Kenny. We're gonna have a couple of drinks like the old days,
Yeah. Okay.
With that being said, thank you all so much for taking time out of your busy day to be with us. Thank you, Kenny, for making time and sharing your amazing story. If you like the show, you can help us by writing a review, or like, share, or subscribe to the Demand Better podcast. We are sponsored by Fit Care Physiotherapy, where the idea is for your focus on your fitness so you can avoid the healthcare space. Thanks again, and we'll see you in 2 weeks. Kenny, thanks, brother.
See you.
Peace.